Good afternoon. Welcome to this first Monday meditation of our last half term together this year. This half term I want to talk to you about growing up. It's something we're all doing all the time, hopefully. It's a lifetime's work. We're changing, growing and developing as soon as we are conceived, as soon as we become an individual. And it's a whole life's work to grow into the individual we could and can be. But my question and my theme for this half term is this: where are we growing? That's supposed to sound a bit like where are we going? Because our growth ought to have a direction. Maybe not a destination we can see or know, but definitely a direction. Where are we growing is also supposed to sound like a question about where we are growing, what area of our life is developing at the moment, what aspect of our lives is changing right now. To get you to think about this, try and figure out what these things have in common. Firefighter, gardener, astronaut, forester, doctor, spy, architect, theoretical physicist, mathematician, botanist, engineer, monk, friar, and priest. That list could go on forever, actually. Did you get it? It's not really a fair question. There's no way that you could have known that all these were jobs that, at some point in my childhood, I wanted to do when I grew up. I wonder what you want to do when you grow up. And I include you grown-ups who are listening in that question too. I'm still wondering what I want to do when I grow up. It's an important question to ask occasionally, and it can be a fun one too if we don't take ourselves too seriously. But I think it can be a distraction from a much more important question. Let's not be so focused on what we want to do when we grow up, what we want to achieve, and what ambitions we have. Let's not focus so much on the what that we forget the who. It seems to me that it is far more important to ask who we want to be when we grow up than what we want to do or we want to achieve. At this time of year, the church calendar has feasts coming thick and fast, and I'm going to use those feasts to reflect on the who God is calling us to be in the next few weeks. The first feast is the Feast of the Ascension. If Christmas is the feast where we celebrate God the Son coming down to earth, Ascension is when we remember him going back to heaven. If Christmas is when we remember God coming to earth to take human form, Ascension is when we remember human flesh taking a place in heaven. The Feast of the Ascension is based around the rather peculiar story of Jesus leaving his disciples and going up to heaven while they looked on, gazing up at him almost as he rockets through the clouds. The Ascension teaches us that even though God wants to be with us, even though he will go to great lengths to help us, it's hard to imagine anyone going further than from heaven to earth. Even though God will sacrifice everything to come after us and protect us, think of the lost sheep and the cross on Calvary, even after all these great and magnificent things where God gets close to us, he is also willing to step back and give us room to grow and to flourish. The Bible uses the picture of a vine that grows and then bears fruit. At the Ascension, Jesus leaves the disciples he's been training and sends them off to complete his mission. He tells them to go into all the world, and he tells them that they will accomplish greater things than he did. He's really trusting them with this, with his important mission, and he's believing in them too, trusting that they will get it done. Just as he trusted his fragile and vulnerable self to Mary and Joseph as a baby. God's all into believing in us and trusting us to do things. So the first area of growth that I want to call your attention to is independence. Independence. I wonder what lockdown has taught you about your ability to work, live, or think independently. What difference has lockdown made to that ability? Has it grown it? Has it made you realise it needs developing? Or perhaps, in fact, it has been a bit too much of a challenge to a skill you were only just developing. Like heavy rainfall on a small shoot. The water should have been life-giving, but the raindrops have knocked it flat on its face. I've learnt, I should say relearnt, that I need structure and deadlines and targets to work towards to give shape to my day and to my week. And I realised that I've not been that good at creating those structures for myself. It's okay to realise where we need to grow. Don't beat yourself up if you struggle to be as independent as you'd have liked in these last few weeks. Instead, I invite you to focus on two aspects of the story of the Ascension that give me hope when I ask myself, where am I growing? The first is this: the disciples did not feel like their training was complete. They still had questions, lots of them. And the New Testament, the rest of it, shows them grappling to get to grips with what had happened to them as they'd lived alongside Jesus. It shows them figuring out what Jesus means for them, for the whole of their nation, for the Jewish people, and finally what Jesus means for the entire world. This gives me hope because I don't have all the answers either. Being independent isn't about knowing everything and having everything under control. It's not about a perfect picture of the destination, a perfect plan to get there, and a perfect performance along the way. No, often being independent is about learning what you don't know and what you can't do on your own. And that brings me to my second encouragement. With the very words that take Jesus out of sight, leaving the disciples to think and to fend for themselves, the very words of commission where Jesus gives the disciples their mission, he reminds them of the resources that they have. Go out into all the world, the entire world, he says, and teach them what I have taught you. But then he adds this: go into the entire world, teach them what I have taught you, and I will be with you, he says. I will be with you. It seems paradoxical that Jesus would leave physically and yet promise to be with them. He seems to be saying one thing and doing another. And yet I think this mystery links to a very real and a very concrete truth that is played out in school year by year by year. As we teachers watch on, as your tutors and as your parents watch on, we notice that when people truly find friends, they truly become themselves. When you truly find friends, you truly become yourself. The right company gives you the confidence to stop conforming, to be yourself, and to grow into who God calls you to be. Many people over the last 2,000 years have found that Jesus is that friend who draws them most truly toward the best that they can be. I hope that this story of the Ascension will encourage you to ask yourself, where are you growing? And to take your independence seriously by thinking about who you will keep company with, who helps you to be honest, and who encourages you to grow. As ever, I continue to pray for you on your journey of discovery.